Welcome to Cinemaholics. I am John Negroni, and he is Will Ashton.
Hey, John, quick question. What is this giant crystal ball in the center of the table with us right now?
That's just a little knickknack. I brought it with me from Disneyland. I don't think you've ever been.
And why are we sitting on the opposite ends of this circle chair or circle table right now?
I don't know how to tell you this, Will, but you are a ghost. You died several days ago. And some would say you died a long time ago, and this podcast exists in two dimensions.
Okay, so am I like a Casper ghost, or am I like a shining ghost?
You've never been friendly to me. That's for sure.
I take issue with that.
You've been to Disney World, right?
No, don't you remember my whole thing about this?
Okay, I just couldn't remember because.
All right, so
okay,
quick recap. Let's do it.
You've never been to the Disneys.
Yeah, so as a kid, I was Disney obsessive. My parents would notice that even before I could read, I would know to put the VHS tapes into the right box because I could recognize the logos, and I was very picture oriented. So they were like, "Hey, this kid loves Disney. Why don't we get him some videotapes about Disney World?" And thinking, hey, that'll kind of tide him over. We're, kind of simple Midwestern family. We're never going to take him there. But for me, obviously, I'm watching these like hour-long promotion videos talking about, hey, you should come to Disney World. It's like the best place ever.
Your dreams could come true.
Like, that's great. I'm sold. Let's go there. And they're like, so they would kind of, lie to me throughout my childhood and be like, oh, maybe we'll go next year. Maybe 2 years from now. Maybe when your sister's a little bit older. Maybe when your next sister's a little bit older. Maybe when your third sister's a little bit older. And suffice to say, I have never in my 30 years on this planet been to Disney World, but not by choice.
Well, you know what, Will? I'm going to make you a little bit of an oath. I want to be there your first day at one of the Disney parks. I do. And okay. I don't know which one. Because, Disney World is very close to where my family lives in Florida. And Disneyland is pretty close to where I live now in California.
Sense. Yeah, makes sense.
So, which one would you go to? If you had to pick, money was not an option, or it was not a big pain point, right? Which one would you go with?
I would probably go with Disney World.
Yeah? Why Disney World? Is it just the marketing itself is like that's the one that haunts your childhood, like a mansion?
Yeah, the videos that I had were pretty Disney World center. I don't know if it was because it was newer or what, but like I feel like they'd always be like Disney World. Oh well, also Disneyland's kind of cool if you ever get to check that out. But Disney World, that's the place to be.
That's the place to be. Okay, well, let's get you there. Let's figure it out, listeners. If you would like to contribute to the Will Ashton's wishes come true.
Make a wish. You're gonna do a make a wish for me. That makes you a little bit concerned.
Yeah, well, not Make-A-Wish. We'll give it a different wording so that, we don't fall into that territory. But
sure.
It must be kind of weird too, right? Because you've never gone on any of the Disney rides, but you've watched all these Disney ride adapted movies.
Sure.
I can't even imagine what that must be like.
And that's the fascinating thing, right? Is that like I've never been on Pirates of the Caribbean. I can't say I've been on the Haunted Mansion tour or whatever it is. But,
I genuinely believe if you went on them, you'd be like, that's it.
Sure.
Like for real. I think that you would just be like, that is what inspired these movies.
But I just get the sense. Obviously, I can't say with certainty because I haven't been on either of these rides. But if I were a guessing man, I would think like Pirates of the Caribbean. This is kind of like a rinky-dink, ride. It's like kind of like you're on a boat and you look at these like wonky, pirate animatronics and stuff. I'm like, how are you going to make a fun summer blockbuster out of this?
Sure.
Turns out one of the like greatest action swashbuckling movies of the 21st century. And so, you see they're going to do Haunted Mansion. It's like, oh, that should be like a no-brainer. It's just a haunted house movie. Like you just have fun, maybe get someone like Guillermo del Toro to do it, kind of like make like Crimson Peak for kids. But then, like, Disney has, fumbled the bag with that one with Eddy Murphy in 2003. And it's just
hold on. I watched that movie in theaters. Was it not even a modest success? I'm going to look it up. Let's
I'm
do
not
a little
saying
research here.
Commercially. I'm saying as a film.
Okay. All right, so I just brought up the box office. I mean, it only made 182 million, which, I mean, 2003 numbers, that's not bad. I mean, and it had a $90 million budget. So yeah, I mean, it looks like it about broke even, or so maybe made like a tiny bit of money.
I'm not saying it was a commercial flop or anything.
Sure.
So it doesn't really sound like it was a big commercial hit either.
13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, we're not playing the Rotten Tomatoes game for that one, that's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you would think of the two rides, at least those two, that Haunted Mansion should be the much easier, more fun ride to adapt into a film. But I don't know. Disney has had some trouble with it, at least until now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's talk about it. And I mean, to be clear, yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, it continues, like that first movie continues to be really the best case scenario when it comes to Disney turning a theme park ride into a movie. Although, to be fair, I think the trick to that one was it was just a good movie. It didn't matter that it was connected to a theme park ride. And you can kind of tell that this movie, Haunted Mansion, I mean, it absolutely is, because I know you haven't been on it, it is taking direct parts of the ride and putting it into a movie. But it's trying to do that, I think, without making it sort of like stick out so much that you can't just watch the movie as it is. But all right, so this is their second attempt to make a Haunted Mansion movie, one that I'm sure they were hoping was going to be a big success. I said in my review that from now on, whenever somebody asks me, hey John, give me an example of a Disney Plus movie, but it's not technically a movie that premiered on Disney Plus, Haunted Mansion 2023 is going to be that movie that I immediately think of first. And I went into this one a little bit interested because Justin Simien's the director, and I like Dear White People. He did the show and the movie, and I didn't like his first directorial, or not his first one, I guess, but it was like his post Dear White People movie. So this is Justin Simien. He did Bad Hair, yes, which was like this kind of like horror movie kind of thing. You saw that one, right?
Yeah, I definitely like Dear White People. I remember seeing that one in college. I remember thinking like this is a good concept. I felt like it didn't really reach its full potential, and I was excited to check out the show.
Giving it like a TV show treatment was the smart idea with that one.
Yeah, I never really watched more than a handful of episodes of that show, but it seemed like the smart pull. Yeah, I heard good things. I think he was pretty involved with that as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, Bad Hair. I think it's kind of like your classic example of not like a sophomore slump, but like kind of like like swing for the fences sophomore film. I think I definitely like it more than you. I'm not like the biggest champion of it, but I think it's definitely very interesting. And even though it's kind of messy, I think it works in a lot of interesting ways. So yeah, I mean, I would give it like a soft recommendation, but his involvement with this film was definitely what maybe at least a little bit more hopeful that this would be something worthwhile, especially considering the horror influence of that second film.
It's got a great cast as well. The screenplay is by Katie Dippold, and the cast of this movie includes LaKeith Stanfield. And I think that's what kind of hooked me in. I did see part of the first trailer, and when I saw that he was involved, I was like, okay, this definitely looks like it has a little bit more of a verve to it. It's got a little bit more of an edge to, what it's trying to do with the Haunted Mansion ride, and maybe do something a little spookier, because the 2003 movie is very silly. It's a kid's movie more than it is a supernatural comedy kind of movie. This one is surprising me though, because when I watched it, it was definitely more comedic than I thought it would be. It's a horror comedy, and the setup is also very unique. And I'll be honest, there are things about this movie where I'm like, that's a good idea. Like doing it this way is kind of interesting, and you can tell that Simien and Dippold were going for something a little bit different than what you would expect, and something that was a little bit looser, but still has those horror elements. But I think ultimately for me, this is a classic example of your movie is a horror comedy, and that's such a tricky thing to pull off because it's got to be really good at both. And this one's really average at both. And I think that only amplifies genuinely how just unengaged I was with this movie. I watched Oppenheimer right after Haunted Mansion. Oppenheimer felt like a shorter movie to me, and that should be inconceivable considering this movie is this movie is a little over 2 hours and Oppenheimer is exactly 3. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I found it to be quite a disappointment, but yeah, where did you come out on it? It's got Danny DeVito in it. How could you dislike it?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't do the double feature you did, but I saw this one sandwiched in between the Barbenheimer experience. Like I saw Barbie on Monday, this movie that Tuesday, and then Oppenheimer on Wednesday, and I can echo
Barbenheimer.
Yes, what it's like a sandwich. I don't even know what you would call the sandwich. But
you did over 3 days, so you should have done all 3 movies in one day. I should have too. You've got responsibilities, a family. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna be an uncle any day now. So I can't just be like going. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it could even be on this very podcast.
I mean, yes, we are due for the first Cinemaholics live birth.
Yes. Yeah. We're like the audio midwives.
Wow.
Incentivizing the kid through our craggly, jaded film opinions.
Will, literally, as you said that, you said somebody could record. Literally, as we were recording this, Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman.
I was trying to find a way. Yeah, I was going to try to find a way to bring that up, but I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway,
bring the mood down.
Yeah. Well, since we didn't really like this movie that much, I guess it's not, that big of a deal. But yeah, anyway, I echo your sentiment as far as, I seeing Haunted Mansion the day before and then watching Oppenheimer, I'm just like, I know this Oppenheimer movie is an hour longer, but if you had asked me afterwards, like not knowing the runtimes, which one was longer, I'd probably be like, yeah, I think that Haunted Mansion movie was like 2.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just because it kind of falls into like this very troublesome trend with Disney where like their movies are becoming increasingly busier and more shapeless. And it feels like they're kind of coming up with like, here are like the outlines of what we should do for this. But then like there are some interesting choices that I don't know if it's more the screenwriter or the director. I'm going to assume Simmons is like introducing with like LaKeith Stanfield's character is like someone who, has this sort of like Ghostbustery interest in the paranormal, but like it's more sort of charred by his grief and his inability to reckon with this terrible loss in his life. And then we have all these kind of fun-ish characters, at least like fun actors to incorporate in the film. And I agree, obviously, Danny DeVito was the one I was most intrigued by. Anytime he was on the screen, I perked up a little bit. I sat up in my chair a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of feel like none of these cast members get much to do. And like having, like an interesting idea for a lead character in LaKeith Stanfield is one thing, but also like as well, even though I do think he's giving a pretty interesting and sort of introspective performance, it feels like a weird one to center your like fun Disney adventure summer blockbuster on. Like this guy who is like deeply depressed and, like reckoning with whether or not there is or is not an afterlife. Yeah, it's definitely a bold choice. I mean, I'm not going to dismiss it, but I don't know if it really brings this as much like enthusiasm and energy into this film as maybe they should have had.
I don't even think the sketch of that is wrong necessarily. It just comes down to the execution here. All of these performers, I think, are doing fine. I think Tiffany Haddish could be a little extra. I mean, her.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Rosario Dawson, Owen Wilson, DeVito, Stanfield. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the performances. Like, sure. I'm not watching these people and being like, oh yeah, they're phoning it in. They're not really caring. You can tell they're trying to make something out of this.
Sure.
The problem is that like their dialogue isn't very funny. When they're scared, I don't feel scared because the things happening to them aren't that scary. And the movie even tries to put it on its head and say like, yeah, it's not that scary all the time. And it's not trying to be, because it's kind of a looser sort of world where it's not just like a one night in the mansion kind of thing. It's they have to like live at this mansion. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the plot here, but basically they're kind of like cursed. So like if they leave the mansion and they get haunted outside of it, and it's even worse. So they're trying to find a way to break the curse so they can leave the mansion. I mean, it's a good idea, but I mean, they just don't find quite a smart way to, I don't know, just hook the audience in. Like this movie's missing that hook, that thing that like gets me invested and emotionally invested.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer that this one leans more into the horror. Like I think rewatching the 2003 one while I was on vacation. I just like I didn't really remember the movie that well, but rewatching it, it was just like they keep undermining the horror. Like it's constantly just kind of like they're introducing some like interesting atmosphere. It's really cool production design and stuff in that movie, but then like you just have Eddie Murphy kind of like constantly downplaying anything that could be interesting horror wise. And then with this one, I think there's more respect into actually leaning into the horror, but I felt like all like the scares and stuff were pretty rote and predictable. Like you just kind of just like, and they're going to turn around and there's a guy behind them now. And like, you know, it's just like, it doesn't really feel like there's like that much influence or enthusiasm with introducing the horror elements. And the comedy just often feels sort of tired and limp throughout. And yeah, I just kind of like, I'm fine with, I love horror comedies. I mean, obviously it's one of my, they're two of my favorite genres and I love when they're infused, but I just feel like there wasn't as much inspiration here as far as like doing one or the, it's not even like one's better than the other. Just kind of like both are just sort of just middling here, unfortunately.
I generally am surprised too that Disney ended up releasing this in the summer, because if they had released this late September, early October, I feel like this could have found its audience, you know, people who would give it a pass for just being kind of average and looking at it as a more accessible kind of Halloween movie. Sure. But I think what they're looking at is like, oh yeah, if we release this in late July, early August, then it can be on Disney Plus in time for Halloween. I think that's the idea. But yeah, it seems like a bad idea to me because I mean, maybe they assumed that this would be like counter programming for Barbie and Oppenheimer, but yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't think people are going to look at this as like, you know, Paw Patrol or something. Like we have the Saw Patrol double feature coming up, and sure. I don't think this is going to hit those waters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they were afraid of maybe like interfering with the Marvels and their other November Disney release, but
that's a problem when you release things year round like this. Right. I mean, and you just can't add hype to the projects that you already have. And it's one of the biggest reasons I think Disney is losing 2023 almost as badly as last year, quite honestly.
Yeah, with the exception of Guardians 3, I guess they've just kind of been on a downward trajectory of late.
It's not a good time for Disney in terms of their movies, sure. And that could obviously change here in a minute. I mean, I think Little Mermaid was okay, but they wanted Little Mermaid to be $1 billion movie.
Right?
They were banking on that. The pun intended.
Sure.
And yeah, no, not quite. And I think this movie is looking like this movie has a $150 million budget, debuted with around $30 million. It's going to flop hard. And how does this movie have $150 million behind it? How does a movie like Iron Man in 2008 cost less than this movie? $10 million less than this movie? To me, it's inconceivable. Like, I just don't understand what's going into these budgets because, yeah, this is not a movie when I'm watching it that I see like a big budget movie. I kind of see like a TV movie with like a better budget than usual.
I mean, we literally just had a Disney Plus Haunted Mansion movie like not that long ago with Muppets Haunted Mansion.
That's right. And it was quite fun.
Yeah, it was better than this.
I you know what? I agree with you there. Yeah, so it's a weird time. It's a weird time. And I also wanted to ask you too, in terms of these like Disney ride movies, I'm a little conflicted because, as I said before, this feels like such a Disney Plus movie, but I don't want movies to just keep premiering on Disney Plus because then that's going to harm the movies that they do release in theaters, right? And people will just assume like they can get, you know, this for that and all. But I think we can make an exception, right, for movies like this. Like to me, this feels just like not a big budget or a movie that warrants the big budget thing. So do you think we're going to get more Disney ride movies down the line? I haven't checked to see what else they have coming up. I'm sure they have plenty of other things. Like they're probably going to try to do another Pirates of the Caribbean thing, you know, eventually. And I'll double check because they might have some stuff that's even been announced.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think like what could they adapt of their rides into a film.
Yeah, I mean they have Space Mountain, which Yeah, it looks like they have the Space Mountain one in the works. Big Thunder Mountain. They did just do. We haven't mentioned it, but Jungle Cruise. I mean, they released that like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think.
Honestly, they're doing one with Taika Waititi, and I'm going to look it up because I forget which one it is. I think it's the Tower of Terror. Yes, okay. Yes, Tower of Terror. That's the one.
Okay, I get Tower of Terror and Haunted Mansion kind of mixed up.
Okay, Tower of Terror got a TV movie in the 90s that's actually pretty decent.
Tower of Terror, that one's at Disneyland?
It is at Disney MGM Studios. Okay. I think they call it Disney Hollywood Studios or something now. That's at Disney World, but it's not Magic Kingdom. It used to also be one at California Adventure, across away from Disneyland, but they replaced it with the Guardians of the Galaxy ride.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I guess like Tomorrowland was like sort of based off of a Disney ride, right?
Yeah, and that's 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
So, but they haven't done one. I mean, besides Jungle Cruise and Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, we haven't gotten one since Tomorrowland. So it's not like they release these all the time. They don't release these like they do Disney live action remakes.
Sure.
But they do have another. So I'm seeing here they have another Pirates of the Caribbean film in production right now, or not production. It looks like it's in pre-production. But Joaquin Ronning is attached as director. They're going to do the Space Mountain one, Tower of Terror, as we mentioned. They're going to do a sequel to Jungle Cruise, Big Thunder Mountain, and then there's another one called Figment, which looks like it's supposed to be something related to like the Imagineering stuff at Epcot, which I'm sure a bunch of stuff that I just said that you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah. I mean, in theory, I get why they want to do movies based on the theme park rides, because it's like, if it's a big hit and people love it, then it's like, oh, we just have this attraction you can go to, and it incentivizes people to go to the parks, which is like a big component.
Disney makes its money. Right. Disney's money comes from the parks,
exactly,
which is why the pandemic really caused a big like uproar. I think all the conspiracy theories for like why Bob Iger dipped out when he did, just to come back and put the parks guy at the head of that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think that he saw like what was going to happen and just did not want it to be part of his legacy. And speaking of which, Bob Iger's extended his contract, so he's going to be CEO for another 2 years on top of like what he was renewed for, right?
Sure.
And he rebooted himself. And
I mean,
solidarity with WGA and SAG.
I was going to say, like, Bob Iger is kind of in the hot seat right now, anyway, because he's one of the big reasons why the strikes, both strikes, SAGA and WGA are fighting as hard as they are for equality. But
fair wages, right? Sure. Yeah, I mean, the guy went away, dipped out, and you know he's worth so much, but he's made so much money from these movies over the years, and he just swallows all the profits. Not all the profits, sorry, but he swallows such a like disproportionate amount compared to the people who make this stuff happen. And I think that like the results are just going to continue to be like this, where it just looks like I think we're due for a season of like just not great movies because the writers just aren't making enough to survive. And like they're demanding so much from them to make things. And it's a really bad situation for Hollywood at the moment.
Sure. I mean, as much as I would like to support WGA, I have to admit, though, I think a lot of the faults of this movie kind of just come down to a fairly mediocre script.
That's what I'm saying. I think that like when you don't pay your writers well, I think that this is one of those situations where you see the result of like when you don't offer your writers, first of all, residuals. When the streaming stuff is continuing to chip away at their livelihoods, they have to churn out safe content. And there are a lot of like really talented people who can't be writers. And so it's just right now, it's not a very good environment for creative people to make a living and therefore to create the things that we know that they can do that are good. So I don't firmly place it on their shoulders. I think that like, if they were getting fairly compensated, then we would be seeing a different landscape right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that sentiment in theory, but I do think that ultimately Katie Dippold is a fairly mediocre screenwriter.
I didn't want to say it.
but I mean, I certainly support the rah, let's give the writers what they're due sentiment, to be sure. I just feel like this may not be the best example because I think they hired her because of the Ghostbusters reboot, which, makes sense. Say what you will about the movie, but I think it made sense, like why they would want that kind of energy in this film for a reboot of the Haunted Mansion film.
Well, after Ghostbusters, she did the Amy Schumer movie, right? With
Snatched.
Yeah. Goldie Hawn.
Yeah, I mean, that's not supporting the argument here. That's also not a great film.
I know. That's what I'm just saying. And I don't think people really like The Heat, which was her first film.
I hate The Heat. I think that's an awful film.
Well, I think that the two projects that really catapulted her were Mad TV. She was a writer for several seasons, I think, on Mad TV, and Parks and Rec, which she. I don't remember what seasons that she did of that show, but I think she was, certainly like an integral part of one of those seasons. She wrote a few episodes. So yeah, I mean,
you ever think about how SNL and Mad TV have the same number of Oscar-winning alums?
I've never looked at the numbers, but that could be a fun little breakdown.
Adam McKay and Jordan Peele are both Oscar winners.
So. I am curious though too, like why Simien didn't write the film. He did write Dear White People, the movie version,
and he wrote Bad Hair, I think.
Yeah, so I do kind of wonder, because you kind of touched on it too, that like the movie has like outlines of like interesting concepts. And I wonder if like that, a lot of that comes from Simien. I don't know the backstory of like how much he collaborated with the screenwriter here, how much was him versus her. I don't know, because he's not credited as a screenwriter, so we can only speculate.
I mean, yeah, in fairness, I imagine he probably did some like slight rewrites, but maybe not enough to justify a screenplay credit, or maybe else. I don't know. Maybe he just was very hands off about the screenplay. I really don't know.
Either way, the result is the same. And, I think that, not a good movie. It was in development hell for a while. You get the sense that Disney didn't have a lot of faith in it anyway. They didn't give a huge marketing budget. So yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a bummer, because I feel like in terms of the characters, I can see sort of the Simien influence. Yeah.
Like the kid in this, I think, is like a very Justin Simien type character.
Sure.
He's like a younger version of the journalist character in Dear White People. At least that's how I kind of make him out. And I wonder if that's like Simien kind of putting himself, he always puts a little of himself into his characters, right? But again, for all we know, that could be totally wrong. And that was Katie Dippold. I don't know. But it doesn't really matter that much.
What I was going to say is that, like, I feel like in terms of direction, it is kind of like his identity. I don't really feel like infuses itself in the film.
I think it's kind of average. I don't think there's anything like awful about how the movie looks. And
I mean, it's a little murky, but that's kind of be expected with these things now.
Yeah, I think it has like little nice touches here and there. Like it's not a slog to sit through the whole time. It really is just like that. The last like 40 minutes, you really just see it's like spinning its wheels a bit, and it makes no sense to me like why this couldn't have been tightened up.
Sure, but
yeah.
I mean, this is the role that Jared Leto was born to play. A creepy, ghoulish, predatory cult leader is exactly what he should be doing, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, the hot hatbox ghost. When I saw Jared Leto's name on the opening credits, I was like, oh no. The summer of Morbius has returned.
Yeah, I mean, very good character design, I will say. I mean, it's like a cool look. Like, it's pretty effectively creepy.
It's straight from the ride, really. Like that. A lot of the stuff is straight from the ride. So that's kind of fun, sort of like, oh yeah, I've been on this ride. That's kind of fun. Okay, sure.
These are things I know.
Yeah, which in your case, I got a negative review and a positive review. And I'll start with the negative. I like to start with the negative. Why not? So this is from Silent Dawn. I'll say this: Haunted Mansion is one of the funniest movies I've seen at the theaters this year, but none of my laughter was with the movie. Abundant product placement soon became a gag in and of itself. LaKeith Stanfield's character mentioning Baskin Robbins as he cries about his dead wife is top-tier comedy. No notes. I had tears in my eyes. It's funny seeing Disney shills go out of their way to make the point that this movie is a great primer for discussing grief for children. Embarrassing. Have some standards. Just keep your kids at home and show them Bambi or The Land Before Time like a normal adult. This Haunted Mansion movie makes the Eddy Murphy version look like an accomplished horror classic. At least a 2003 film had the decency to scare the you-know-what out of its target audience. And it also featured Terrence Stamp. Now it's 2023, and you can settle in at the multiplex with a 2-hour piece of Disney Plus BS designed with plenty of references for 43-year-old theme park nerds. Ugly, stupid, insulting excuse for a children's horror movie, but I did laugh at it. The only thing I really disagree with here is, let me make sure I'm not here to say like the Haunted Mansion 2003 movie was, redeemable in any way. I do not think this makes that movie look like an accomplished horror classic whatsoever. I would actually say that I would prefer this one over that, because it has more interesting stuff going on. But yeah, what do you think?
Well, the 2003 one's shorter, so it's definitely a feather in its cap. And Terrence Stamp in that movie is pretty amazing. Like that is fair. Pitch perfect casting there. And I take no fault with that. But other than that movie doing the decent Christian thing of establishing which characters go to hell and which ones go to heaven, I really don't think there's that much that's remarkable or interesting about that film. Other than like the really stellar like production design of it, and the look of the house is pretty great to see that, on the big screen, especially if you love the ride. But yeah, I would say they're either on par. Or this might be slightly better. Maybe it's just because Danny DeVito is in this one. I'm a little bit more charitable to this film, but I am glad that review brought up the product placement, because it is insane. Like, as that review noted, there's a moment, like a very, pivotal emotional moment for the film. And like, I'm just thinking like, all right, we need a brand to figure out what caused the death of this character.
Right.
Who
and
is
it's
volunteering?
Like Ant-Man and the Wasp already did like the whole Baskin Robbins thing earlier in the year.
So you're thinking Disney was, you're thinking Disney was just like, hey, Baskin Robbins, you know how much fun it was to have you and Ant-Man's like, yeah, people still come up to us and ask us like, is Paul Rudd here? Yeah, sure. Anyway, we have this other movie we're coming up with, and I thought it'd be a really fun idea to kind of have a very crucial emotional moment involve Baskin Robbins. Are you cool with that? Yeah, I don't see why that's a problem.
Well, they probably were like, oh, I don't know. It does seem like it might be in poor taste. And then like the Disney executive like grabs him by the collar and is like, listen up, chump. Barbie and Cold Stone have July on lock. And so if you don't make this happen with us, we're going to go up and beat your dad. Like something like that.
Yeah. And there's also like, is it Burger King when like there's like a weird sort of like moment when like they're like, it's trying to have like a moment with two characters, but they keep talking about like, oh, I got these like spicy
the tater tots.
Spicy tater tots from Burger King.
Was that Burger King? I don't remember if an actual restaurant was brought up. I could be just misremembering.
There was definitely a specific restaurant, and they made a point to show the logo at the screen. I just can't remember if it was because it's been almost a week since I've seen this. So it's not a movie that, similar to the 2003 one, is going to reside much in my memory. But some pretty incredibly wild product placement in this movie. I'm glad that guy brought it up.
All right, and I have the more middling review here. I'll add the middling review, and then we'll do the positive. Okay, so the middling review is, the filmmakers' hearts are in the right place and the cast is game, but there's a stiffness to Haunted Mansion that it can never quite overcome. I'm sure the script read great, as all the storytelling beats are in place, but the way it's executed on screen is missing something. Like, there's an awkwardness to the set pieces, a certain missing joie de vivre. Still, aiming for quality and being hyper-specific to the aesthetics of the ride is better than the general disinterest of the Eddie Murphy version. I just want to be pure. I love that Danny DeVito will be his character from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in every role he plays from here on out. Keep the man grunting and groaning, because it always brings a smile to my face. That was from Justin Declue.
Okay, Justin Declue. Okay, yeah, from Important Cinema Club.
Yes. So I agree with a lot of it. A lot of what you said here. Yeah. I mean, sure, I think that the stiffness is there, and it like I don't know if I agree that the script read great, but maybe just like the premise itself. Like I think it's a good starting point. It's the right kind of story I think that they want to tell, but yeah, the way the execution, that's what it comes down to here.
Yeah, I mean, well, I definitely agree that Danny DeVito could just be doing anything on screen. Like, it could just be him quietly eating a banana, and I'll just be, clapping like a seal,
smiling along. You show that banana who's boss.
Yeah, and there's a pretty wonderful scene in this where they're at like a hibachi restaurant, and like they're trying to like sell Danny DeVito on this, and he's like getting like food thrown in his mouth. That's like, I don't know. I know that Always Sunny is very good about recognizing that Danny DeVito eating anything is just inherently super funny. And I'm glad that little moment is kind of like a ray of sunshine, otherwise kind of bleak and morose and sure, just kind of unremarkable film. But yeah, I just really don't think Dan DeVito gets like that much to do here. And then like I was telling you this off the air, like without getting spoilers, like they hint at him being like a pretty crucial part of the end of the film. At least for me, I felt that way. And then like they just don't do that. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to give too much away, but I think the ending in general, I think is very busy, to borrow a word you used earlier. Like there's a lot going on, and it definitely is more of like a kind of Marvel type of ending kind of thing, where like all the characters are doing this and they're running around, and then this is over there, look out. It's very, it's very bombastic in a way that I don't think fully works. But
yeah, just it's traditional now, like 35-minute green screen extravaganza where just people stand on their marks and wind blows in their face as character says threatening things. It's you
could tell they all filmed at different times too, because like they're all just standing in one spot. Right. Let's end with a positive review though. This is from Slim. So Slim said, family movie night does it again. Gosh, this was so much fun. Hilarious too. Owen Wilson stealing nearly every dang scene he's in. My wife and I love the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, and this felt like a great fit. It's definitely going to join our yearly Halloween movie watching rotation. She gave it 4 stars, and my son gave it 5. They were both disgusted when I told them its average rating on Letterboxd. For the record, I thought the trailers stunk. You saw the trailers. Like I saw part of the first one. Do the trailers stink?
I mean, I thought the first, I don't know if it was a teaser or a trailer, but the first one's like really strong. Like it made me actually pretty excited about the film. I was like, oh, this looks
I think that's
like
what I
fun.
saw. Yeah. I was like, okay, cool. It's an interesting take on the ride. Sure.
Yeah. And I think that one focuses more on the horror and it doesn't really show any of the jokes or anything. So I think that's a big help. Like I feel like the other trailers show the jokes and it's like, that's where I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And like I was like, oh god, who wrote this? And then I saw the screenwriter. I was like, oh no. Like,
I'm about to finish up editing Pedro Gratterall's review of Haunted Mansion. He did for In Between Drafts, and so I'll probably be taking a look at that trailer that you're talking about because we'll put it as part of his review. So I'll get a chance to see what you're talking about.
Oh, that also reminds me. Did you see any of the like State Farm commercials that were associated with this film? There's one I saw before some movie. And it's like Justin from State Farm. Do you know that character? Do you watch commercials? It's him going in the Haunted Mansion with Rosario Dawson. And like, I thought about that commercial watching this movie. And I'm like, so Rosario Dawson just straight up just made Justin from State Farm's life a hell because he's going to be forever haunted and followed by these
do that
ghosts.
A bunch of this where they like don't really care at a certain point. Like at one point they're kind of do, but then
So I just keep imagining like Justin from State Farm trying to sell, car insurance to random people, and just these legions of ghosts are just haunting and tormenting him for all of his waking days. And it's just like, I don't know, just kind of an odd marketing choice there, I guess. Now I have to think about this.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about it too much, by the way, too. Like the kid in this, like his like bullying story and wanting to see his dad and like also being scared. A lot of that stuff didn't go super well together. It kind of made the kid like look really, I think, I don't know. They do something with the kid, especially like later in the movie, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. It just feels like it's there because the script demands it. Well, and it's not the kid's fault, but it's definitely, I don't know. The way he's written, I think he's kind of inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they're kind of going for like the you need to stop being weird and be a man storyline. But then they're like, we sat down with 45 random suburban moms and we felt like that wasn't a good message to impart on children.
Yeah.
So they're like, he has peculiar taste, but he's good at heart.
And he loves Marvel movies. Check out Secret Invasion on Disney Plus now. I wish there was like a whole thing where LaKeith Stanfield comes up. He's like, who's your favorite Marvel character? And he's like, Nick Fury. He's in Secret Invasion. Like I was ready for it.
Well, if you love references to the Avengers, be sure to check out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Teenage Mayhem or Mutant Mayhem.
Nice little plug. Yeah, I might be checking that out soon. All right, let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game. Well, Ash, we have 170 reviews counted. What do you think? What do you think critics are landing score-wise?
Well, let's see. That guy hinted at the Letterboxd score, right? The last review.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a while ago. It could be different now.
All right, but but he didn't mention anything about Rotten Tomatoes. So
no.
Nevertheless, I still feel like this is probably going to be middling. Like, I don't think like everyone's going to be hating on it. Like, I don't think it's going to be as low as the 13% that the original Haunted Mansion movie has.
Okay,
but I think it's still going to be kind of just so. Like I like you said, bad release date, not quite good enough to justify itself on its own merits. Good cast, but to what means, sort of thing. Production looks nice, but it doesn't. It's not like wow inducing. So I'm gonna say between 48 and 56%. I'm gonna say 43%.
43%.
Sorry, 53%.
53%. Sorry. You would have been much closer at 43. It's 41.
Okay, so a little bit lower than I thought, yeah.
Yeah, a bit lower. And I think it's been trending downward, if I'm not mistaken. What about audience score? So we have 250 plus verified ratings.
Probably higher than the critic score, but I don't know if it's like super positive. Maybe like 58%.
Funny enough, 85. So you have it reversed.
Wow, okay.
85%. I do think the people who are showing up for this are liking it. So showing us critics up. But let's test that against Cinema Score. Cinema Score.
Okay.
I was
gonna say, I mean, was your audience into it? Because my audience didn't seem like super into it.
I watched this literally with one other critic in attendance. Nobody else was there. So I sat there and I thought I was going to be the only critic there. I walked in and the folks behind the movie, like the PR folks, were like, "Oh yeah, I think we only have like 7 people showing up." 2 showed up, me and one other person. And in fact, I wasn't even on the list. Apparently I signed up too late, but like I showed up and they were just like, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe they were like, oh, good.
Someone's here."
What?
They were just like, "Oh, thank God someone's here." We weren't lying.
Yeah. So, and then the other guy who showed up to screen the movie came in like literally as it was starting. So like, yeah, I have no idea how it plays with like a regular audience. So, but what about Cinema Score? What do you got for that?
Cinema Score. Well, I was gonna initially say like B or B minus, but that audience score makes me think it's like a B plus.
It is a B plus. Good job. Was your? I forgot to ask. Was your audience into it at all?
Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, like, I feel like my audience wasn't like super into it. Like
was it matinee?
What was that?
Was it a matinee?
No, it was a critic screening.
Okay.
Or like it was like a screening with GoFobo members and stuff.
Okay.
Like, I mean, like they were like laughing at like certain things, like, but I feel like it was only a certain number of audience members that were like into it. Like the rest were just kind of not like really emoting or
I didn't really laugh at all during this movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember chuckling at some things that Owen Wilson said, which I didn't really get to talk about him much. I thought he was fun in this. I feel like he's another character that gets kind of like gets introduced as like a big deal, and then like in the middle he's kind of just like thrown to the side and then like thrust back into the focus by the end.
I forgot about him for a good minute there. I was like, oh yeah, he's in this, isn't he?
Yeah. Very obviously like similar to Dan DeVito, just kind of doing his thing. But I enjoy when he does his thing. Yeah. I mean, Tiffany Haddish is also doing her thing, and I don't enjoy that as much. But I feel like my audience was into Tiffany Haddish more than I was, so I'm probably an outliner in that respect.
All right. What about Letterboxd score? We have 17,000 watches, very, very low. I mean, just look at like what Oppenheimer was, 700,000 or something like that. This is 17. But yeah, what do you think? Average rating for Letterboxd?
Well, that guy said it's pretty low, so I'm gonna guess that's
could be a misdirect.
Could be. I'm gonna say 2.8.
You're only 0.1 off. So do you think it's 2.7 or 2.9?
2.7.
No, 2.9. I gave you the second chance because you were steered, but no.
Well, I was closer this time than I was for Oppenheimer.
That's true. I still can't believe you guessed so low for Oppenheimer.
I don't know what's up with that. Yeah,
you were tired. You had a long day. And speaking of long days, that's going to do it for us on this bonus show. And okay, so I think next up,
this is the bonus.
I thought so.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know if this was the bonus or if Oppenheimer was the bonus.
Doesn't really matter. It's like
sure.
I mean, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, which will probably be talking about next week. It's between that and Talk to Me or both. I also do want to watch the first Slam Dunk. I didn't mention that yesterday when we were talking about Oppenheimer. And yeah. And there's also theater camp. So we still have a list of movies. We still have to kind of decide. What did you say you were leaning toward out of all these? Talk to me.
Of those ones, I mean, I have seen TMNT.
Yeah.
So I'd be down to do that.
No.
I want to bring Mike Zur on, not to tease a guest who may or may not be on the show, but he saw it with me, and I feel like he's been wanting to, be on a traditional episode with both of us. So I feel like that'd be a really fun opportunity to do so, since he's a big TMNT fan. But I mean, I really wanted to see Talk to Me, and I really want to see A Fire, which you didn't mention. I'm kind of whatever about theater camp, but we're playing at the theater this weekend. So
maybe I'll talk about theater camp as somebody who cares.
I mean, I'm not disinterested. I mean, it has a funny cast, like what's her face from The Bear?
Molly Gordon.
What?
Molly Gordon and and also A.O. Dibri is in it as well.
A.O. Dibri was who I was thinking of. Yeah, Molly Gordon from Booksmart and whatnot. Yeah, she directs.
She's more than
stars.
They're both in The Bear. Molly Gordon is more the star in this movie. A.O. Dibri is more of like a side character in this, but she has some fun stuff in it too.
Sure, but yeah, it's apparently not doing so hot box office wise.
No, and I don't think it's playing in a lot of theaters anyway. So yeah, I think it's gonna get to Hulu pretty fast.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, but all right, we'll figure out what we're gonna talk about. We'll keep you all posted. Join the Discord if you want to chat with us just in general. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. For the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, see you
next time.
Will Ashton.